Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful Monday. Today we're going to be talking about tips for success when trying to sell your Crested Geckos in 2023. I made a video very similar to this for 2022, so we're going to be taking a quick recap of some of those tips that are still relevant to today, and along with some new tips that I think are specific to 2023 and years to come. Now, the reason I started to make these videos to begin with is last year there was a lot of people who were asking for tips and advice on selling their animals either quicker or at all. Maybe they were struggling to even sell animals, period. And so that's why I made that initial video. And given the world climate and just things in the gecko world as well, I don't think things are going to drastically improve this year. So I hopefully have some new tips for you, some things that'll hopefully maybe get your mind moving a little bit and thinking about new things that you can try to hopefully help your business if you're a established gecko breeder, or maybe if you want to get into the hobby. But in any case, let's just talk a little bit about the gecko market right now as it is. So in 2021, in spring, March of 2021, there was roughly 1,500 geckos for sale on MorphMarket. And MorphMarket's kind of my bench for this, how many geckos are for sale and that kind of stuff. So in March of 2021, 2 years ago almost, there was 1,500 geckos for sale. In January of 2023, almost 2 years later, there are now 3,800 Crested Geckos listed on MorphMarket at the time of making this video, meaning that there's about 2.5 times more Crested Geckos for sale right now than there was 2 years ago, and last year there was about 2,500, so about 1,000 over last year as well, which means that the number of geckos for sale and the number of geckos that you're potentially competing against is increasing pretty rapidly every year that goes by, making it obviously harder for you to sell your Crested Geckos. So my tips for last year was first need to understand what makes the morphs valuable. So like I used the example of lily whites, you want them to have more white. Extreme harlequins, you want them to have more pattern. That kind of thing. So you need to have a basic understanding of Crested Geckos and what makes each specific morph valuable. That'll be your first goal. And then my next one was, before you even get into the tips, was you need to understand what you're doing it for. Is it a business? You want to try and put food on the table for your family? Is it just a hobby? Maybe you're selling geckos to buy more geckos and just kind of see where it goes. Or is it just something you're a little curious about and you just want to pair two geckos together and then be able to sell the offspring just for the kind of experience? So that was my other thing that I said you should understand before getting into gecko breeding. But let's go over my tips from last year quickly. If you'd like to see the more in-depth explanation, I'll have a link down below into that video. It might be good as well because some of those tips are still relevant to today. But my number one tip was, if you're breeding, start with quality animals, but just remember that because an animal is more expensive, that doesn't make it better than other options. My second tip was, how hot is the morph? So understand the morph of gecko you're trying to sell. Is it selling fast, slow? Is it going up or down in price? Obviously, if it's a very hot, high-end animal, it might sell a little bit faster than if it's something that's not as popular. So just keep that in mind. My third tip from last year was, don't always chase the hottest thing. And if you had watched my video, I would say that's a pretty good summary of what kind of happened last year to some specific morphs. So that might be a good one still for this year. My fourth tip was, try and build a good reputation. That one's pretty self-explanatory. My fifth one was, look at this chart and kind of pick a strategy. So are you going to undervalue your geckos and try and sell them really fast? Are you going to price them at what would be considered like a fair market value, which is different for obviously every morph and every specific gecko, and try and sell them in a reasonable amount of time? Or are you going to try and get the most bang, the most money for your geckos, but they're going to sell slower because you're overpricing them? So really that was my fifth tip. And my bonus tip was, at the end of the day, work with what you like and you'll do better. Basically saying that if you're passionate about whatever morph or color you're breeding, that you're going to do better because you're more passionate about it. And so those are my tips from last year. I feel like they're mostly self-explanatory. So now let's get on to my tips for this year. And those tips are still good for this year as well. Obviously, a lot of those are still very relevant, and some of those really summarized last year. So my first tip for 2023, which I think is more important than ever, is eyes are important, meaning that eyes on your social media content and eyes on your geckos for sale obviously is one of the most important things. So this might mean stepping up your social media game, whether that's trying to post more on Instagram, Facebook, maybe creating a YouTube channel if that's something you could do, or any sort of way to get more people to see your content and see your animals that you have for sale is obviously going to help, because even just not in selling geckos, but in a lot of things, the more people that can see it, the more people that can look at it, the better off you'll do. So obviously, the more people that see your animals for sale, the higher probability it is that one of those people will buy your animals. And so this is very important. And that's why people with a larger social media following tend to not have as hard of a time selling their animals, is because they're getting a big range of people looking at their animals for sale, and there's a very high probability that one of those people might like to buy it, especially if it's someone who's interested in what you're selling. So that's my first tip. This is a huge one. I think this is more important now than ever, because like I said at the beginning of the video, there is more crested geckos for sale than there ever has been before. So for example, there's 500 geckos on MorphMarket tagged Extreme Harlequin right now, and there's over 1,000 tagged regular Harlequin. Obviously, those are two of the most popular categories, but what are you going to do to make your gecko stand out from the other 1,000 geckos tagged Harlequin? It's going to be, you're going to try and promote it more, you're going to try and improve your picture quality, your gecko quality. You got to do something to stand out, because just having a Harlequin for sale, I don't think is going to cut it anymore. It might have in the past, but there is just so many geckos for sale that you're going to have to do something a little bit out of the box to get recognized and hopefully sell that animal. My second tip is focusing on something specific, and what I mean by this is maybe a specific morph. And let me tell you why this could be hopefully beneficial, but there's also some drawbacks as well. When it comes to focusing on something specific, for example, I'm really working on red phantoms. Now, I'm not doing just red phantom to red phantom to get a bunch of red phantoms. I'm doing other things with them as well, but my general focus is on red phantoms, right? And the thing I always think about is, yeah, I could go out and I could chase the most, popular thing, which I kind of am in a way. I'm working on some axanthic stuff, but my general focus is on red phantoms, which are definitely not the most popular thing. But if I can make red phantoms that are nicer than the majority of the ones available, people are going to have to come to me to get their red phantoms. And so this could be very beneficial to you if what you're working on is something that's a little bit more unique. For example, there is nobody that I know of who's specifically working on improving like bright yellow phantoms or bright orange phantoms. So if you had these really nice bright orange, crisp, clean phantoms that people could mix into other things, I guarantee that you would be able to sell them, pretty quickly, number one, and pretty much for whatever you wanted for them if they were really nice and they're nicer than anyone else's. And my thinking for this is because in the past, I had a lot of different morphs, and I still have, a good variety. I haven't, focused down so much that I only have red phantoms, but I definitely cut a lot of projects out that I wasn't maybe as interested in, and I was just going to produce average things anyway. And like I said earlier, if I was just producing, average extreme harlequins, well, I'm trying to compete with possibly 500 other geckos, and are mine really going to be that much nicer than, Joe Blow's down the street? Maybe, but they also might not be, and then I might be stuck with them for a long time. So I think it's important to, try and focus on something, and if you can improve it, I think you would do really well this way. Obviously, this is something that takes time, and there's also people who believe the opposite strategy, and that you should try and do a bunch of different things. That way, if one thing's not doing well, you always have another thing to fall back on. So it's kind of two different ways of thinking about it, but I'm of the mindset, at least right now, that, focusing down on something at least a little bit more narrow-mindedly, focusing on it could really be beneficial, especially when there's getting to be so many crested geckos for sale. Now, my third and final tip for you is to have good customer service, and I think this is a very important one. Like I mentioned earlier, there's more crested geckos for sale right now than there ever has been before, and even though things in the gecko community are very friendly most of the time, and most people are excellent to work with, obviously there is still a small amount of competition between everyone, because if you're a breeder, obviously your goal is to sell the animals you produce. I think we can all agree on that. And so to some degree, there still is a small level of competition. Your goal is to sell your animals, right? And so with more geckos being for sale than ever before, more people breeding geckos than ever before, something that you really want to work on is ways that you can set yourself apart from other people selling geckos, right? And I think one of the biggest ways you can do that, that'll have the most impact on your customers, is having great customer service. And this can come in a couple different varieties, but I can tell you, as a customer this year of many different people who were breeding geckos, I had a lot of great customer service experiences, people who would answer my questions and maybe I was looking for specific things from them, and they were just great. They were excellent, and I can tell you right now, I would definitely go back and buy geckos from those people anytime. It was excellent. It was great customer service. But there's also been people this year, not as many, but there was a couple where the customer service was very poor. And I can tell you, I would never buy from those people again just for that reason alone. I mean, why would I when there's so many great options for people to buy geckos out there with better customer service? You don't want to deal with the people who have poor customer service. And so I think this is something that a lot of people could use to their advantage. Just, try and answer questions, help your customers out, and just overall provide a good customer service experience. And I think you'll do much better than some of the people who are not answering questions. Maybe they're just, they don't want to, whatever it is. If you have good customer service, helping your customers, they will come back to you and you'll make a lasting impact on them and hopefully a good business relationship with them in the future. So I think that's my biggest tip for this year, is to have great customer service. It'll leave a lasting impact on your customers and they will definitely come back to you in the future, which is what you want, of course. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. Do you feel like there's anything else that I missed in this video that is a good tip for 2023? Leave a comment down below and let me know what I missed. With that being said, I hope to see you in my next video.